Welcome back, Crewlia, because I am Julia and you are my crew. I am doing a pirate thing this week. Where shall we steer our ship of knowledge today? I think it's time that we talk about weakening critical reasoning arguments, which is a common ask on the GMAT verbal section. Now, as you already know, you can't attack the validity of background information or evidence in CR questions. So the only way to do this and weaken an author's conclusion is to attack the assumptions that led them from their given evidence to their conclusion. We're going to practice today with a few TTP practice problems. Let's start with an easy problem, just so you can get a feel for it. Last week, the Silver Bullet Tea Company, which recently opened a chain of high-end tea shops in the affluent city of Silverton, began a marketing campaign which involved television, newspaper, and internet marketing aimed at letting the residents of Silverton know that its tea shops are now open for business. Therefore, its tea shops will soon be filled with residents of Silverton purchasing tea. Which of the following, if true, most weakens the argument above? Okay, you can see from the question that we're being asked to weaken the argument. Let's label our parts so we can best see where to begin our attack. The first sentence is background info and evidence, and then the second sentence is your conclusion. What could be true that would weaken the link most effectively between this first sentence and this second sentence? Shall we look at the answer choices? All right. A. In the city of Silverton, the law permits tea shops to operate only if they do not violate city ordinances. This isn't relevant for one. I assume that's pretty typical of any business in any city. Secondly, we have no reason to believe that the tea shop isn't complying with city ordinances, so I don't see how this would affect the argument. B. The Silver Bullet Tea Company spent less than half of the budget that it had originally allocated for the public marketing campaign in the city of Silverton. This could possibly weaken the conclusion if they didn't run very many ads. It could also be that they got a great deal and ran even more ads than originally planned at a great price. Since it could go either way, I don't think this is the answer. Let's keep looking. C. Most residents of the town of Silverton would be willing to purchase the expensive tea sold at a high-end tea shop. This strengthens the argument. It removes a potential issue from consideration that no one would shop there because they're not interested in the goods. However, that's not what we need for this question. Next, D. Because they are into active outdoor activities, most of the residents of Silverton rarely watch television, read the newspaper, or use the internet. The argument states that the tea shops will soon be filled with customers since they now know that the shops are open for business due to this advertising. This choice calls into question that the residents of Silverton would have been exposed to the advertising and might very well be no more aware of these tea shops' existence than they were before the campaigns ran. It does weaken the argument. And E. When asked in a city-sponsored survey what the city of Silverton needs most, many residents responded that it needs more high-end tea and coffee shops. This one also strengthens the argument because it shows there is a demand to meet the increased supply. So best answer is going to be D. Let's look at a more challenging question. A health guru. For 2 years following their reaching the summit of Mount Everest, people who have safely returned from the summit of Mount Everest have an incidence of heart attacks lower than the incidence of heart attacks in people in general. Therefore, it must be the case that one can decrease one's chances of experiencing a heart attack by climbing to the summit of Mount Everest every 2 years. Which of the following, if true, most calls into question the health guru's conclusion? This is a good example of misinterpreting cause and effect and their relationship, because most of us reading this aren't thinking the conclusion follows logically from the premises at all. It makes much more sense for it to be the other way around. Let's go ahead and find our conclusion, which is here after therefore, and our evidence, which is here at the beginning. Then we can work through the options. A, there is little difference between the incidence of heart attacks in people who have viewed Mount Everest from airplanes and the incidence of heart attacks in other people. This actually strengthens the argument a little, not by much, but it does eliminate an alternative cause of the reduced heart attacks by saying that simply viewing the mountain has no effect. It's something about climbing the mountain, perhaps. Anyway, we're trying to weaken the argument, so not this one. B, the incidence of heart attacks in people who regularly climb indoor climbing walls is lower than the incidence of heart attacks in people who do not. This could weaken the argument a little by mentioning that climbing alone leads to a lower risk of heart attacks, and you could skip the Everest part altogether. It's not super strong, though. C, it is generally the case that only people who have achieved a high level of physical fitness succeed in climbing to the summit of Mount Everest. This weakens the argument that the cause is climbing Mount Everest and the effect is lowered risk of heart attacks by introducing an alternative third option that could lead one to both climb Everest and have less heart attacks, increased physical fitness. So this is the best answer so far. D, climbing to the summit of Mount Everest costs much more than it costs to join a local gym for 5 years. This isn't relevant. We're not talking about costs here. And E, many people who have experienced heart attacks could have prevented them by reducing their body weights or quitting smoking. This also isn't relevant. We aren't looking for a list of things that could help lower the risk of heart attacks. We're just looking at the relationship between climbing Everest and heart attack risk. So this is off topic. Best answer is going to be C. And then let's put these skills to the test with our hardest question yet. It is much easier to cultivate, i.e., plow and otherwise prepare for planting, fields from which any rocks near the surface have been removed. Nevertheless, fields used for centuries for farming on the island of Rapa Nui were found to be full of pieces of volcanic rock. It must be the case that the people who lived on Rapa Nui did not develop expertise in agriculture. Which of the following, if true, most seriously undermines the above conclusion? So what's the best way to call into question the assumptions that link this conclusion, these premises? A, the people of Rapa Nui were dependent on farming, as there were on the island few trees from which could be built boats for fishing. This might possibly weaken the argument, but it requires too many mental leaps to be a great answer. Let's check the others. B, when Europeans first arrived on Rapa Nui, they found a thriving population. Again, this could be construed to weaken the argument, but it demands more mental leaps than the GMAT would ask of testers. There should be a clear relationship. You should be able to see all of the steps. B, many of the pieces of rock found in the fields used for farming on Rapa Nui were small enough that they could have easily been removed by an individual working alone. Again, this choice requires more mental acrobatics than should be employed in your exam. This, to me, is what separates easy questions from hard questions, that more of the answers could be explained to answer the question. So you've got to look for that very clear relationship. D, the people of Rapa Nui carved from volcanic rock large statues which they placed at regular intervals on the island. This one offers an alternative explanation as to why there would be rocks, but we don't care about why there's rocks in this sense, so it is irrelevant. And E, volcanic rock gives off small amounts of phosphorus, a plant nutrient, the levels of which are generally quite low in the soil found on Rapa Nui. This one states that the rocks the people were leaving in the soil could act as a form of soil enrichment, which seems like an expert approach to agriculture. This one directly calls into question that the conclusion automatically follows from the premises. The link is a lot more direct than the first three choices, and that's what we've been looking for, so best choice E. Thanks for sailing along on this learning journey with me. I hope you're feeling more confident than you were about facing GMAT CR questions. Keep up the good work, and best of luck. I will see you next time.